Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us some really interesting material to look at today, these excerpts from James Clear's work, all about the science behind habits.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
So our mission today really is to kind of boil down the core ideas for you, the ones you can actually use to make changes that, stick around.
Exactly. We're diving into, well, the often surprising science of how you master habits and actually hit your goals. And there's a central insight we're going to unpack that's, well, it's a bit counterintuitive.
It really could change how you think about improving things, couldn't it?
Totally.
And just quickly, for anyone who might not know, James Clear is the author of that huge bestseller, Atomic Habits. He's a major voice on habits, self-improvement, so he's definitely put in the work.
Yeah, for sure.
The big question we're trying to answer for you today is, okay, you've got a lot you want to achieve, maybe several goals. How do you actually make lasting lifestyle changes?
Because that's the reality, isn't it? You're probably not just thinking about one single thing. Most of us, well, we have a few areas we'd like to work on. Getting fitter, maybe being more productive, personal growth. The list goes on.
Absolutely. We all have that list. But like James Clear points out, it's just so easy to slide back into the old ways, the old routines. That's the real challenge, right? Making the good stuff permanent.
And that's where this initial research comes in. It's about something called implementation intentions. It's a pretty solid concept in psychology.
Implementation intentions. Okay.
Yeah, and the main idea is you're much more likely, the study suggests like 2 to 3 times more likely to actually follow through with a new habit if you make a really specific plan. Like when you'll do it, where you'll do it, and how.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. So it's not just, I want to exercise more. It's getting really specific.
Exactly. Think about that example from the research study they did.
The sentence completion thing.
Right. Completing the sentence. During the next week, I will do at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on you fill in the day at, you fill in the time at, and you fill in the place.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So the insight is, don't just want it. Plan the exact when, where, and how. That specificity is the magic ingredient, basically.
Precisely. That detail, it creates this kind of powerful mental cue, a pre-commitment. You've decided the day, the time, the place.
Yeah.
It makes it harder to just, blow it off when the moment arrives.
Makes sense.
And the cool thing is, it works for lots of stuff, not just exercise.
Yeah.
Studies show it helps with recycling habits, sticking to study plans, even trying to quit smoking.
So it's broadly applicable then.
Very. Instead of all workout, it's Monday, 7 a.m., run in the park for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's your implementation intention. That's specific. If this, then that plan.
That feels much more concrete, less wiggle room for excuses.
Yeah.
But you said there was a catch, a really important one.
Yes. Okay, and this is where it gets really, really interesting. Follow-up research found a critical catch.
Ooh.
These implementation intentions, they really only seem to work effectively when you are laser-focused on one goal. Just one.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah. Researchers found that when people tried using this super specific planning for like multiple goals at the same time.
They'd be less likely to succeed.
Exactly. Less committed, less likely to follow through compared to people who just picked one habit to focus that specific planning on.
Hold on, so making detailed plans for more things could actually backfire. I would guess the opposite. Like planning multiple things would just make you more intentional overall. Why does focusing on one make you less committed to others? That feels wrong somehow.
It does seem totally backwards, doesn't it? But it really seems to point to, well, how limited our attention and maybe our willpower is if you spread that focus too thin.
You dilute it.
Kind of. The mental energy needed for each plan, the constant switching and monitoring, it seems to just get overwhelming.
Yeah.
And commitment drops across the board. So the big takeaway is, use implementation intentions, they're powerful, but pick one habit, just one.
Okay, one habit. Wow. All right, got it. Now, the article also talked about this idea of automaticity. What's the science there? How do habits actually become, automatic?
Right, automaticity. It's basically how behavior goes from something you have to consciously think about doing to something you just do, almost without thinking.
Like brushing your teeth. Or that first coffee in the morning.
Exactly those things. You don't really decide to do them each time. But new habits, you start out needing serious conscious effort. You have to remember, you have to push yourself sometimes. It feels like work. The key insight, though, is that habits get easier not just because you get better at forcing yourself, but because repetition actually, rewires your brain.
Right, like that example in the article trying to start a 10-minute walk after breakfast. At first, it probably feels like another chore on the to-do list.
Totally. But as you keep doing it, walk after breakfast, day after day, The brain pathways linked to that action get stronger, more efficient, it gets smoother, requires less active thought, less mental grunt work.
So it becomes more ingrained.
That's the core process.
Yeah.
The behavior gets more automatic just through sheer repetition and practice.
And I remember seeing that chart in the source material showing how automaticity sort of climbs over time. Starts low, goes up, then levels off.
Precisely. There's this kind of tipping point
Right.
where it shifts from, I have to make myself do this, to, oh, I'm just doing this now.
Okay.
It becomes routine.
Right.
Now, the study mentioned an average number or something like 66 days for a habit to become automatic. But, and this is really important, don't get hung up on that specific number because the researchers themselves found a huge range. Some people took much longer, some maybe a bit shorter. The more, let's say, realistic takeaway is probably measured in months, not just weeks. It takes time for habits to get really locked in.
Okay, that feels more grounded than just, do it for 21 days.
Yeah.
So, okay, we have these specific plans, the implementation intentions, but use them for one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And we know that repetition builds automaticity over likely several months. So, how does this all come together? How does this help us reach those bigger goals we have?
Well, this is where we get to that counterintuitive strategy James Clear really hammers home. The key insight, the kind of punchline, is that the best way to change your whole life isn't trying to change everything at once.
No.
No. It's actually focusing all your energy on mastering one specific habit until it's completely automatic, done without thinking. Then, and only then, you move your focus to the next habit you want to build.
So to get to those big goals, better health, more productivity, whatever it is, you break it down into these like tiny habits and you conquer them one by one until they're just part of who you are.
Exactly. It's like building brick by brick. You master one thing, make it absolutely solid, then repeat the process for the next one.
So you play the long game.
You play a long game. The paradox is, by narrowing your focus now on just one thing, you actually achieve way more in the long run.
I can almost hear some listeners thinking, but wait, I have so much I need to change. Like right now, it feels overwhelming maybe to think about just one small habit when your list feels huge.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling is completely normal and understandable. But think about it this way. Feeling overwhelmed and scattered. That often stops us from making any progress.
Yeah, you just spin your wheels.
Exactly. So by channeling your energy into mastering just one habit, you're not only massively boosting your chance of success with that habit, but you're also, crucially, freeing up mental bandwidth. Like Clear talks about, if you constantly feel like you're drowning, just trying to keep your head above water with all these changes you're attempting.
You can't think straight.
Right. You rarely have the mental space to step back and figure out smarter, more sustainable ways to handle things long term.
That drowning analogy really hits home. You need to get one thing under your roll just to get some air, basically, to even think about the next step.
Precisely. And when you successfully nail even one new habit, make it stick.
Yeah.
That builds momentum. You get a win, you feel more confident, and like you said, you free up that mental energy. Then you can direct that energy more effectively towards figuring out the deeper stuff.
So it's not ignoring the other things, it's strategic, prioritizing to build a foundation.
Exactly. A solid, sustainable foundation for whatever comes next.
Okay, so quick recap for everyone listening. The research seems pretty solid. Want a habit to stick, make a super specific plan, when, where, how. That's your implementation intention.
Right. Big boost to your chances.
But, and it's a big but, this really works best when you focus that plan on just one habit at a time.
Crucial point. Don't spread that planning too thin.
Then there's automaticity. The more you repeat something consistently, the less you have to think about it. It becomes easier, more routine.
Takes time, though. Think months, realistically.
Never months, not days. And the kind of surprising key to making those big life changes, it's focusing intensely on mastering one specific habit until it's automatic before you tackle the next one.
That sums it up really well. And it does kind of change how you look at things, doesn't it?
It really does.
Instead of that huge pressure to fix everything overnight, it offers a more manageable step-by-step path that, according to the science, is actually more likely to work.
Yeah, it makes the whole idea of lasting change feel, I don't know, less daunting, more achievable. So, maybe a final thought to leave you with, thinking about all this. What's the one specific habit you might choose to really master first? Because that single, maybe seemingly small focus, That might just be the powerful starting point for all those bigger changes you're aiming for.
That's a really good question to ask yourself. And hopefully, yeah, this deep dive into the science has given you some valuable tools and maybe a new perspective on reaching those goals.